Chaos and scale have always been the foundation of the Battlefield franchise, and Battlefield 5 is no different. Squads of soldiers relentlessly push towards objectives with either sheer force or improvised tactics, while gunfire and explosions ring throughout the beautiful but war-torn landscapes. It's an overwhelming sensory experience and, for the most part, a fine execution of a familiar formula. Battlefield 5 goes back to World War II's European theater as the backdrop for first-person shooting and vehicular combat in large multiplayer matches. It's not too dissimilar from Battlefield 1, where every weapon has a distinct weight and impact that comes through vividly in both sight and sound. The core of Battlefield remains mostly untouched, but small tweaks are welcome additions. Ground troops are even more deadly this time around with a revamped ballistics model that results in reduced time to kill for skilled players. All players regardless of class can revive squad mates, which highly encourages sticking together, but it doesn't negate the importance of the medic class's instant revive. Class roles and teamwork are further emphasized by the attrition system, the changes made to resource scarcity. The support class's ammo distribution comes in clutch when you survive multiple firefights, while the assault class has a perk that grants more ammo upon scavenging. The game's health system is partially auto-regenerating, but relies on having a medkit on hand distributed by medics. As impactful as attrition sounds, it's not so overbearing as to drastically shake up Battlefield's core, though it does make going rogue less viable. The Fortification system lets you build predetermined structures, like sandbag walls, barbed wire coils, and check hedgehogs. There are no resources tied to this, though the support class builds much faster than others and can prop up things like stationary guns. Overall, it feels a bit tacked on, but there's no denying its effectiveness in the right situation. Sandbags for a little cover can go a long way for holding down an objective when everything else has been reduced to rubble. Above all else, Battlefield 5 truly shines in grand operations, a series of 3 consecutive matches or rounds intertwined by brief narrative bits inspired by World War II events. The dress-up is a nice touch, but the real reason Grand Operations works is because it keeps up the momentum from round to round and packages focused, well-executed modes like Airborne, Breakthrough, and Frontlines. Frontlines in particular plays out like a tug of war where teams fight over different objectives in sequential order within defined sections of a map, depending on the phase of the match. This game type isn't entirely new, however the mechanics built around Battlefield 5, along with the shift in map dynamics in each phase, makes the game an absolute thrill to play. It naturally ushers a team's attention to a handful of clear objectives and provides a method to the madness, creating a satisfying push and pull where success feels earned. Unfortunately, the series staple of Conquest has become the weakest link, which has devolved into a match-long carousel of flag captures, easy kills, and cheap deaths. Most maps feel too condensed and disjointed for the high player count and mechanics of Conquest. You're often caught from behind or flanked by enemies that simply stumble upon you. It goes both ways, as you'll often find enemy squads with their backs turned because you lucked into a certain spawn and ran in the right direction. There are a few bugs in Battlefield 5, some that are forgivable like wild ragdoll physics, but some are more problematic. Rarely would you have to revive a squad mate by a door, but you're likely to only get the prompt to interact with the door instead of reviving. On very rare occasions, the map goes blank when trying to enlarge it, or health packs just don't work. Thankfully, it's not enough to overshadow the game's best parts. All the while, you'll be earning XP for a number of separate progression paths. There isn't a ton to unlock, but leveling up weapon proficiencies lets you customize them to your playstyle. And various weapons and pieces of equipment unlock as you rank up classes. It's a fairly sensible system, though the same can't be said about vehicles, since they're hard to come by and each one ranks up separately. Customizing each class's appearance is where cosmetics like different uniforms and weapon skins come into play. It's also how company coins factor in, the in-game currency that you earn through challenges like daily orders or assignments or finishing matches. Most cosmetics can be acquired with company coins, but you should note that weapon and vehicle perks are also tied to company coins, at least they're relatively low cost. There are no microtransactions at the moment, but are said to be implemented in the future for cosmetics only. Battlefield 5 isn't solely a multiplayer endeavor with the return of War Stories, the single-player campaign. It attempts to present a more earnest tone to a brutal conflict and highlight lesser-known parts of World War II, like the Norwegian resistance and the Senegalese tirailleurs who fought for the French army amid racial discrimination. The effort is admirable, especially when it comes to the tirailleur campaign. The mix of stealth and combat in Nord-Lys as a one-person army can be fun and showcases some of the game's best set pieces. But the English side is an eye-rolling series of tedious missions that goes for a more lighthearted tone that doesn't work. War Stories has its moments, but it's all over the place in terms of design, tone, and style. Currently, Battlefield 5 still has features to implement as part of its game-as-a-service approach, designated Tides of War. It's an exciting prospect that there's a lot more to come at no additional cost, but you can't help but feel that the launch package could have been a bit more dense. And unfortunately, we won't be able to evaluate those parts of the game until they arrive. The series has a winning formula that Battlefield 5 doesn't deviate far from, at least for now. Conquest and the map roster don't mesh well together, however, Grand Operations and the other modes within it steal the show and create some of the greatest moments the franchise has offered. You might be surprised by the impact of the slight changes made for this game, especially when you're deep into pushing objectives and front lines alongside teammates fulfilling their roles. That's when Battlefield 5 is at its best.